one of the most perhaps healing things about being here and about your way is that you are disinterested in people. I'm certain of that. I mean, you don't need anybody to show up to validate yourself, what you're doing. You don't need me to come back. I'm not here to entertain you or to, validate your work, your function. So basically, it seems like my progress here is really up to me, and it has no strings attached. Can you talk something about your disinterestedness in people and whether or not you care that anybody make any progress?
A disinterestedness is compassion. It's called being and letting be. See? Living and letting live. It's not like being heartless. There you have it. Right, it's compassion. Now, if and when someone says, "Hey, I really need to hear this. I might be moved to listen." See. We can test the need at that point. See how deep it goes. And some people might need for me to just say no, or yes. Yeah. And so on. And you particularly came with a bunch of history. You were sent by a very dear individual in this field called Rakalam, right? And you spoke in those terms when you first called, right? And so the rest of the story is your own. And you had a need. You had a need to know for yourself and come out and hear for yourself and find out, because you were questioning whether any of it had anything to do with you, actually. And you realized on your own terms, in your own time, that it had a lot to do with whatever you are, and whoever you are, and wherever you were going. So disinterest then is granting everyone space. That's what disinterested is. The granting of space. I have a book called Zero Heart Space, which has to do with that. Doesn't mean dead. It means not willing to be entangled unnecessarily in someone else's drama, particularly. Come on. Whereas that's all humans want to do. So hear drama, to be entangled in drama, to get stuck in drama, to suffer drama, and to go down the tubes of drama. And we have to ask, who needs it? Really, if you see it a certain way, who needs that? Some people actually need it. So, good for them. So you came with a need, and you came with the need to be closer than other people. See, you came with the need to participate in the music, or at least what is understood here from the viewpoint of music. See? Yeah. Mhm. You made that clear. You made that known. That's why you're asking questions even now. Mhm. You haven't heard enough yet.
Yeah, it did take me years to find resonance, in a certain sense.
Understood? This is a different time world from most people's time worlds. Right. Everyone's in their own time world. And as the Bible has stated, in terms that have resonated for millennia, there's a time for everything. Time to be born, time to live, time to pass. So there was a time for you not to know, and there was a time for you to know. There was a time for you to not get it, and now there's a time for you to get it, whatever that is.
I haven't heard too much from the Buddhist tradition about time, but a lot here, especially with your kind of astrological background. And
You mean the system I have of time mastery?
Yeah.
Right. Which was born of astrologic interest when I was young. Before that time, I was told by my elders I would be an astrologer. I was one before, and I didn't want to believe it. I wasn't interested in it. But they were right about it. See? The karma was so strong, they picked up on it. So, whether it was before or after, doesn't matter. It did come to pass. And I renamed it, I guess you might say coined it, not so much astrologic in terms of being the effect of the system, solar system, but given it a designation of time mastery, which is the individual's right to freedom from time, space, energy, and matter in this universe. See, going back to spiritual, original spiritual, say, reference. See, now we are in time, but not of time. And not everyone is wired, or not everyone has the same kind of brain, interest, capacity, tendency, or programming that resonates with time knowledge, time knowing, as such. Some say it's just garbage. Others know better. Everyone knows this is a big clock. It's called the universe. It's a big organism. It's a clock, work, and it's working. Any scientist that says it's not so, it's not a scientist. Hasn't seen yet. They don't know yet. This is a big clock. It's huge. Time is ruler of the universe. Time rules. So we need to master time, and that's why I call it time mastery. Incarnation is about time mastery.
Is astrology is dealing with...
It's time, yes, you're talking about time.
As somebody who intends to master time, is astrology a necessary thing to work with?
Could be. It has been for many civilizations, way before this one. See? If you're talking about universal knowledge, if you're talking about karma, you're talking about time. You're talking about time cycles. What is astrology if not about time cycles? Qualities of energies, qualities of rays, qualities of patterns and configurations. See? Call it what you want. It's the universe, solar system, planet, life, nature. See? Living. Tick tock, 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 tick. Tock, tick, 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 tock, tick, 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 boom, boom, splash. Yeah, earlier you asked if there was a difference, or there's any kind of distinction that can be made from spiritualist origins and, let's say, dharmic origins according to the Hindus, right? The Hindu system. Now, it would be safe to say that the spiritualist system is also part of the Hindu system, for those who are sensitive in that particular way. Say. For those who are more intellectual, then you got to go to a philosophic system. Say. For those who are much more, let's say, yogically inclined in terms of hatha yoga, and taking responsibility for your body and mastering your biologic condition, mastering even your genetic condition. That means transforming your body from one level of culturing and your mind to another level of culturing, preferably higher culturing. See, so I understand, because I've studied these things to a certain degree when I was young. I looked through that to see what seemed to be true and what was the same or different from my own roots. My own roots, we could say then, are more like Judeo-Christian roots to begin with, right? But that's not the beginning or end of what it is. In that system you have, let's say, a couple of concepts there. You have the concept of the transcendent in terms of the Judeo system, but yet there's still a reference to the God as something that could be wrathful, it could be nice, it could be kind, it could be like a human being. See, so I have no interest in that kind of God. See, I respect it, but I have no interest in that kind of God. And so when we get to the Christian evolution, and this is like, more recent, we're saying there were probably many, many other levels of understanding from races from before and that are not known already, extinct perhaps, or transcended. And so we have the idea of the Father or Source as being transcendent, like somewhere else higher, see, in some kind of heavenly abode or whatever. See, now this is also part of the Buddhist, I guess you might say, philosophy, where there's different levels and planes and worlds, many different worlds. So we're talking about pluralism, perhaps, that it's most exhausting, right? And so we have these different concepts that are part of it, see. What we do know about the Buddhist teachings is that his first series of teachings were manifested in terms of the Four Noble Truths, see. And so you have to get to that point to understand the origin of the evolution of the Buddhist teachings. First Noble Truths, that there is suffering and so on and so forth. Spiritualist teachings are not exactly with that. They're related to that thing. But if we go back to the Christian teachings, which have a little bit of the same spiritualism in them, but it's also native, where you feel that the Great Spirit, see, can descend, show up, and regardless of your condition, regardless of where you are on the time wheel, impose itself upon you and turn your life upside down and destroy it even, or transform it for you in the blink, in a snap. So it picks you, it catches you, right? It takes you out of your, whatever your is, yeah, right, is. Right? And there's nothing you can do about it. That's why I've said many times, you're better off waiting until you have a car wreck, God forbid, as they say, right? So that you have a shock and it wakes you up and you're different, maybe all the better for it after that. See? Because otherwise you're in a state of numbness, dumbness, see? Darkness, until you're shocked or awakened. That's what awakenment means. So when we're talking about the Buddha, it means already awakened to awakeness. See? And then you translate that into Christianity and say you've seen heaven. You've gone up to heaven. You've gone to the Father, let's say, or the Mother, which is equal and just as real. You have Mother Nature, no, you have Mother God and you have Father God, whichever yourself prefers, and you can designate it any which way you want. I would say it's a heart God. The heart. Period. End of story. It's just the heart. You need to align yourself with that and reconcile your resonance accordingly, if you can. If you can conceive of that, if you can feel it, if you can resonate with it, if you can know it, see, if you can acknowledge it, understand it, see, if you can master that. See. So the spiritualist is like, well, it can get you, or you can work towards it. In other words, it's sudden. It's a sudden path. In Buddhism also has sudden path that may be more perfectly described in terms of Zen training. Yeah. Everything else is more progression path, a progression gradual path, which is valid. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the Four Noble Truths, the Buddhists talk a lot about suffering, and it's almost seems like it's equated with desire. The word desire is almost synonymous.
Desire is suffering, suffering is desire, and suffering is emptiness, and desire is also emptiness, and emptiness is desire as well. Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't exist already. Say. Mm-hmm. So these are intellectual paradoxes now. See? Until you enter the light itself, then you see it clearly, and it's only the light. See? Mm-hmm. So this is the intellectual, philosophical paradoxes that are intended to purify the mind and bring about shamatha, calmness, clearness, openness to what is beyond that.
Mm-hmm. And so, until we're working from a place of that sort of luminosity, desire is the same shit as everything else.
Desire, it can be painful karma, okay? Or craving. See? There's no craving, there's liberation. There's no desire, craving, whatever, attachment, they're all the same thing. There's liberation, see? Clear sailing. But desire is holding. So if there's holding and clinging and obstructing like that, grasping, apprehending, right? Concern is really what they fall under the umbrella of concern, attachment, suffering. Yeah, of course, you're obstructed. You're not going to know anything from there. You have to let go in order to know. And what we're talking about knowing is knowing nothing, knowing the real grace of being, the grace of practice, the light in the moment, peace, beyond neuroses and self-thought mind, body and world programming. See, culture as an obstruction, as something much more real than the infinite. See, in other words, you're meditating on the finite as your reality. You're free to do that. Take what comes with it. If it makes you feel glorious and victorious and liberated because you have something you can know and cling to and take a stand for, so be it. No one cares.
So then that desire specifically, is not really worth going after in as much as just...
Well, it uses you, so it's not about you going after it or it coming to you. It lives you. You're living from desire. Desire to know, desire to be, desire to need, desire to awaken. All of these things are built in. See, it's a paradox. See, so you have to desire desirelessness, see? And then you catch up to the Buddha's understanding. or in the case of the Christian energy and wisdom, well, you have to already transcend to the Father. You have to know what the Father's about. That means beyond this, not the world. You have to go beyond the world. That means go beyond what it is, what it appears to be as anything. See, material, going beyond the material. So the spiritual is really a statement of being, not being, rather, material. But, that's the concept. So, we can say material that is subject to the forces of gravity, if we're talking more literally. See? And then if it's spiritual, then it's about more or less being subject, as an extreme, see? Subject to the forces of levitation and rising. See? And so then the enlightenment is like being beyond the material and the spiritual as any kind of duality. Okay? And that's pretty much the status quo and the bottom line as it is in terms of awakening.
Yeah. I guess I'll rephrase a question from a close friend, which is...
Or just anybody, just a question.
Yeah, just a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why would one do anything either alone or with people?
Well, if you're ignorant, you would ask a question like that. See? If you're an ego and you believe that's all you are, then you would ask a question like that. See? Because you're in fear. You're insecure. See? And you think people are a solution because they can distract you into thinking, well, you're actually doing something important. Because you're around people. I'm with people, so I'm okay. I found God in people. Well, for some, that might be as high as it gets. So, so it's easy for you to find God in people, right? Than to find people in God. So we're talking about children who are not awakened or enlightened. Because when you even get into the theory of enlightenment, it's huge, it's big. It's big. It's not about peeps, it's about the universe. The heart is the universe is the heart, means this is a really impossible mission. Good luck. It's on the scale of Einsteinian physics. E equals mc squared.
Is the spiritual journey one that can be done?
Well, you can find, listen, we're calling it spiritual. We're really talking about healing or therapy. People need therapy, so they call it spiritual journey. Once they have a little bit of healing, they're fine. But they're not really on the spiritual journey. Once you have a little bit of healing, it's like mom giving you your lunchbox for school. Say, okay, honey, have a good day. You got your sandwich, your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and your apple in your little box, your small container of milk, and you'll be fine for the day. And so you are, as a kid, you're fine. We have what you need there. Your mommy is representative of what you have, represented by the box and what you have in there. Maybe a couple of lollipops or something, sweeten you up, make you feel very special. So we're really talking about that level of, let's say, evolution. Okay, so you need healing, you go to the medical doctor, but that's not the same kind of healing because you're not getting the healing from your family that you need, because if you have the healing from the family that, if you have the healing you need, you get it from your immediate circle, you're fine, you're healed. Then you got to deal with what people are really about, and that's the world. That's society in general. Okay. Human struggle. That's the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the world, and it's a scary place to be in. It's life. See? So we can't be naive about that if we're on the path of spiritual intelligence. The spiritual journey is very real. It's about life and death on its own terms. See? It's not for kids. It's not kindergarten. It's about mastery. It's being open to dying. Not too many kids are open to dying. So we're talking about two different realities. It's called spiritual. There's nothing really spiritual in just needing basic healing, except you're going to feel good. That's what yoga is about, making you feel good. And friends, like in school, in the what is that? In kindergarten, when you have friends you can trust, see, you feel safe. See, so it's really depending upon other people to make you feel safe. It's not security as such. See, you have to reach that point in your evolution or unfoldment where you are the creator of safety. And then you are the creator of what there is to be frightened of at the same time. See? Then you're on the spiritual path when you're there to master your own demons. Yourself. Your self-created demons. See? If you have intelligence along those lines, or if you have a hard enough awakened to say, no, I have to not project my demonic energy and fear and concerns on other people, especially my own kids. So I have to clean that up. Better for me to clean that up, like a responsible adult, and then I'm doing something productive for the sake of mankind. So.
Is this path, is this spiritual journey something that...
Say again?
Is the spiritual work...
So it's called that. So let's use the phraseology, the so-called spiritual work.
Sure, yeah. Is it something that's even possible to do with someone else, or is it by its nature?
That's how you hear about it, through others. That's how you're going to hear about it, because other people are doing it. So you have a percentage of people that are doing it. It makes it much more, let's say, humanizing, right, to deal with. So this is what certain humans do. Yeah, it's called practicing the path of self-mastery, self-transcending, spiritual practice. So we say self-transcending means heart-opening. Spiritual practice. Self-transcending, fearless, spiritual practice. So when you're dealing with that part of society where you have adults, but they're really just kids, right? Afraid of life. Then of course they're going to need a tribalization to a certain degree. Not as a reality, tribalization as a step on the path to awakening, to a higher level of humanization, which includes the spiritual dynamic of being able to be responsible for what you create and what you need to destroy in you that is not creating enough. That is self-defeating, self-sabotaging, self-limiting. See, what you don't get in your family, you have to go outside of it to find. I couldn't find outside of my family what I found in the family. So it'd be the Dhamma, see. I found it in the family. But I did go through a phase, which, everybody goes through, I guess relatively speaking, where I felt what the family was doing was not of value to me and didn't mean that much to me. So I had to leave it, so to speak, go beyond it. And strangely enough, going deeper into whatever consciousness is, going deeper into myself or whatever you want to call it, the soul, going deeper and deeper, I started to realize that they were right. And that they were right in the same way that the Buddhists and other traditions are also correct. Say, correct. That there are many levels, there are many dimensions, and that it's a universe. There's an outer and an inner universe, and we are right in the middle of both of those. See? So we can close our eyes and go into the inner universe, and see and hear and feel things according with our perception, and maybe according with our needs, if we have a need to see and believe or whatever. Just as you have most of the other people in the material sense, it's really outside of that whole level of consciousness. Not absolutely, but generally speaking, relatively outside of that. Seeing things relative to themselves in terms of what the world is doing, what society is doing, what others are thinking, what others are being, what others are studying, and so on and so forth. Just to become part of the crowd, and that's, I guess you might say, the good and bad of culture. And what culturing is about. Assuming what other people are doing to be your reality. It might not be. Fortunately for me, I had the music going on all the time, so I remember partially assuming what other people were doing was my reality. I had this, I guess you might say, default program. I would come back to my inner music. Regardless of what was going on, regardless of who I was with, so the inner music more important. For my survival, more important. It's not that I loved it more, I loved them less, or whatever. No. You have to go to your sources, your real sources, if you have any. If you don't have them, then you don't have them. You can go to other people and find some source there, if you need to do that, or a system, school. And that's what it's given us. I'll be the last one to say, well, you have to go this way. No, there's no such thing. You can't follow this, you can't do this. That's the truth. You have to follow something else. You can learn from what is going on here. And the guidance here is universal and impersonal, so fine, it's like, who cares? If you do it, you do it. You have to come to terms with it, so that you are at peace with what it is. So when we're talking about the similar ground between the spiritualist dogma, spiritualist training, and Buddhist, an aspect of Buddhist training, because Buddhist training is so vast, it's hard to say it's one thing, not one thing alone. If we're talking about heart consciousness, then, all native, let's say, systems try to get you back to that, if they are what I would consider to be bona fide native systems concerned with your awakening and your enlightened wisdom. Yes, they're the same. How you get there, depending on the karmas involved, it's relative. Some would say you have to go on a physical quest. You have to go out and fast. You have to fast, and then you get visions. Or delusions, depending on what school you come from. No, those aren't visions, they're delusions. Okay. So the psychologists, the intellectual materialists say they're not real, so they're delusions. So then you're delusional. But you got to get through that, though. The idea is to see that while you're going in through your delusions or your visions, that there's something there that you can use. The idea is to use what it is and then put it to practice so that you can get closer to what it is you need to be for yourself. The musical phenomenon, as it is, that's going on in some beings, as it was in my case, is very distinct, and it has its own rules, it's in fact its own universe, And while it applies to other beings, because other beings can impact that, and how you feel your own inner universe, it's not governed by what other people do. It can respond or react to it, but it's not governed by it. So other people can't access it. We can say that has a spiritual dimensional componentry to it, which is the same thing. Say that you cannot be destroyed. Your body can be destroyed, but your consciousness cannot be destroyed. And I'm not talking about person or soul, as is a criticism from certain Buddhists. So we're talking about awareness. That's the indestructible reality in everybody. Call it what you want. In that sense, we're talking about philosophic differences, but they don't amount to much. They're not real. Because in the midst of that, the heart is expanding, the heart is learning, the heart is like singing a song. See, it's unfolding, it's waking up. Despite all the different systems and cultures that exist, this thing is the potential of every human being. The divine is the potential of everyone. As I was saying earlier, going back to spirit descending, yeah, that's going on all the time, actually. Or the yogis ascending, that's going on. So we have both currents going on at all times, We're wired for that, so if it happens at any point, it's consistent with the reality. It can happen at any point. See? And it can stop at any point in terms of being a process you can analyze. It can stop. Your mind can go beyond anything and everything because the potential of the mind is transcendence. See? Already gone. Clear. Zero. Everything else is part of it. It's all inclusive. It's not like saying there's nothing existing. Everything is existing. It's coexisting. Everything is co-emerging. We have to see that as a native recognition. Because we're breathing beings. When are you going to be your breathing and the intelligence the breathing is that enables you to survive? Others would say, when are you going to be the heartbeat that's always been going on inside there and what its message is? See? What its purpose is? See? Yeah. As representing the heart of all beings, not just your own particular self-heart. We have to consider something here in terms of the evolution of the world and in terms of the purpose and function of genius throughout history. See? It's really from the inside out. It's the inner world first. So it's not like it's a make-believe world. See? Creativity doesn't just come out of nowhere. I mean, it does, in effect, but it really comes from inside. So if we're talking about an Edison or a Tesla, these are very introverted individuals. They're looking all the time. They're open to seeing something come to them from within. See, that could also be likened to prayer, see, and the monastic and the religious introvert, see, the spiritual introvert, the intuitive, see, the same. Depends on what your karma is to determine how it shows up in your case. That means your bloodline. Your bloodline might have something to do with that. See, so when given, let's say, similar experiences as a child, I'd hear music, of course, coming from musical genes. So how else is it supposed to show up? But then when I made contact with my, let's say, Aunt Gracie, who had a non-musical but more psychic level, then it was time for me to start crossing over with my experience and understanding, oh yes, well that's also what's going on. So it's not just musical phenomena, but it's also then, so let's say, super subtle phenomena showing up as music, right? Because the world is a universe of sound, so there's no reason why it shouldn't show up as music because it's all vibrating sound anyway. And depending on your emotional body, it could very easily, maybe normally, naturally show up in forms of musical. Emotional tonal strains, right? Melodic strains, right? Song, psalm, okay? True to all the natives in the history of mankind. Song. Native song. And then you have the spiritual version, visions, see, that come from within, which are given to inform us, see, and reveal things to us that our physical eyes can't see, and our intellectual, say, componentry is not properly designed to bring to us. So we have to have more going on inside us that is super sensitive, see, super conscious. Yeah, I like that term, super conscious. See, and then we can receive much more of what it is that we're going outside to other people hoping to receive, and they're not going to give it to us because they don't have it. So if you're going to waste your time going to hanging out with people who really don't have what it is you need to begin with for yourself, but you don't really know that until you have a crisis of awakening to let you know what you need you always had and you always were all the time, but it's not neuroses. See, the beauty of it is that it's beyond neuroses. And therefore, in all the traditions, they say that when this so-called epiphany occurs, or crisis, of awakening occurs, peace is at stake. Peace is on the table. Mm-hmm. It's awakening into peace. It's not awakening into more stress and suffering and nonsense. See, crisis, confusion. That becomes the wood for the fire. You're willing to let go in a heartbeat. Boom, say, gone. What's next?